Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 DFS and prop live stream out there for the Tour Championship. Going to break down what to expect from East Lake Golf Club, as well as how we're going to attack things over there on the Showdown and prop side of things with some of our exposure. So hopefully you're having, I should say, a fantastic Thursday evening and are ready to talk about everything we've got out there for Friday. So you got any questions? Let me know down in the chat. You just want to see hi down there, feel free to go ahead and do that as well. We're going to do our normal shtick over here on the channel. Get a little bit more time tonight. Don't have a dinner reservation as close to the live stream, so we're going to be able to go through some of the pin locations, talk about the course setup, do a full deep dive over there in Underdog and Prize Picks, as well as talk through the Showdown slate to go ahead and kick things off. So you guys know the deal. You've been here for a while. It's going to be our typical live stream. Just hoping that you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. Let's go ahead and start it off with our look at our presenting sponsor of the live stream, which of course are our friends over there at the Ship It Nation. Ship It Nation are a great source for all your needs on DFS, not just what we have over here on the golf side. In fact, over there with the Ship It Nation, you have football starting in a few weeks, hockey, NBA, MMA, NASCAR, a bunch of different sports that you probably haven't even heard of when it comes to DFS. You can get projections, player pool stuff over there, all the advice that you're looking for the different pieces of exposure that you're playing. So if you're more of a well-rounded player, not just a one-trick pony that goes out there and plays golf lineups, maybe you're playing some of those other sports that are mentioned or showed on the screen right there, make sure to check out the Ship It Nation crew. They're first off, great, if not the best resource out there, one of the best. And when it comes to pound for pounds, like what you're getting for your money, Ship It Nation has all the other big sites beat. They're not going to price gouge you. They're not going to make you spend $1 million a month to go out there and join their site. And if you use code Luke10, you'll also get a discount off any membership, which helps support the channel and give you guys a little bit of a better price tag over there on that side. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. Of course, right, presenting sponsor. A lot of you guys are probably already familiar, but if not, maybe you're new out here in the DFS scene. If you're looking for that all-encompassing site, they're a great resource to have, right? If you're a one-trick pony on golf, they do have a golf-only tier over there as well. So, if you're using my content, using other resources, you want to add on something on top of that, or even if you're just starting out and looking to join a golf site, they've got some great stuff over there on that side. I got the DGen 75 Stone, Tambo Hoop, all great resources. Let's talk about this golf course, which today played like we called for. So I don't know if I was the only tout to say this, but I thought it was going to play relatively easy. Maybe not 2.5 strokes under par easy, right? Out there with nearly a 4.75 birdie average, but I did think 1.5, maybe 2 strokes under par was what I would expect out there for the field average. So reasoning for that, of course, were some of the design changes that they've introduced. You have the extra par 5. You also have hole 8, which is going to be scoreable the entire week. And it wasn't drivable today. They didn't quite move up the tee box, but they are going to do that in one of the next few rounds. Heck, might even be 2 of the next 3 rounds that we get. So we'll have to see what they choose to do there. But there were some par 3s that were moved up. In fact, I think all 4 par 3s were a little bit shorter than usual out there for today. You also had some generous pin locations, I would say. Nothing that was all that difficult outside of hole number 1. I mean, I guess there were a few others, like 13 wasn't the easiest pin location, but the par 5s were all really gettable. Even if you missed in the bunkers, you had no problems getting up and down. They're likely going to change that as the week goes on. So this 2.5 under par average, it's probably as easy as the course is going to get. But in terms of how it played, I mean, I got to see the course for the Pro-Am, got to see the Content Creator Classic, helped a lot with trying to get a gauge on the golf course, but it's going to get a little bit harder as the week goes on. So, they might move back some of those par 3s tomorrow. They might decide to use some less generous pin locations out there on the par 5s. Whatever the case may be, probably around 2 under par, maybe even a little bit harder than that out there for round 2. Rounds 3 and 4, they're likely going to ramp up the difficulty even a little bit more. So they still might move up hole number 8, right? That would make the golf course a little bit easier on that one particular hole. But the 4 par 3s all being moved up, the really, really simple pin locations out there is probably only going to be a round 1 thing. So we'll have to see if round 2 they go out there, roast the golf course again. Maybe that's not going to be a factor, but at least based on what I saw out there, I thought it was a very scoreable setup. I think they tried to make it as easy as possible out there for the players, and you saw the players take advantage of it. Let's see what's going on. We got Bart down there, Bo Darling as well. Hopefully you guys are having a great time. And he said bounce back for Rory and Aberg. So we're going to talk about Aubert for sure, where we talk about the DFS plays, but everyone is capable of bouncing back. It's only been one round at this stage, so especially somebody like Rory or a Ludwig Aubert, more than capable of bouncing back. But I really like Aubert, and we'll talk about why here in just a few minutes. It's going up, Bart. Scotty said hold by beer. He indeed did. 7-shot lead. I believe he's like minus 300 on books. So yeah, I think hold my beer was a good way to put that. He said, looking good, Luke, sans hat. Yeah, no hat out there. I've got a little bit of the tanning issue going on. I don't think I'm as tan towards the top of my head as the bottom. But yeah, I was out in the sun all day. The hat was kind of just getting old of being on the head. So we took it off. You pulled a Rory, I guess, and went hatless for today. What's going on, Karoom? Pouring up a Crown and Coke on my behalf. I haven't had any yet this week, but with dinner, I'm going to what was one of my favorite meals of my life the last time I went to this restaurant, and I'm for sure getting a smoked old fashioned. So I had that. That was fantastic. It's a steakhouse called Marcel over here in Atlanta, and it's not anything crazy. It's not like, Michelin star restaurant or anything like that, but I got a steak there last time, and it was unbelievable. Like, I literally said it was like maybe the best steak that I've ever had. So we're going back there tonight. It's a little bit of a later reservation. It's all they had available, even just out there for a small reservation, but is what it is. Crown and Coke might be in the cards as well. We'll have to see. So fade Scotty into single entry. We'll talk about the DFS stuff here in a few minutes, but he's going to be real high owned, that's for sure. And single entry might even be like 50% plus. So you're definitely at least going to have to consider that out there in your process cap. I'm not sure if I could do it myself, but you'll have to make that determination yourself. Let's talk through the weather out there for tomorrow, which is not going to be a huge factor really any of the 4 rounds. When you only have 30 players, only about, I think it's like a 3.5, 4-hour spread for the tee times, you're not going to have an opportunity for one side to really get an advantage. Now, if the winds randomly kick up at, let's say, like 2 p.m. or something like that, right, then maybe there could be a little bit of a micro edge to go out there and take advantage of. But in this kind of setup, no cut field, I mean, even a 70-player field, right? It's hard to find that kind of advantage. A 50-player field at BMW was the same kind of thing. It's hard to find anything to squeeze out of that. I think this week, if you're playing the weather, you're probably overthinking it. But if you are using it to break a tie, let's say that there's somebody going off super early tomorrow as opposed to going off super late, maybe you could shy towards the guy with, you could see around like 3, 4 p.m., there are some winds that are going to kick up. Again, this could be just noise out there in this HRRR model. If that ends up happening, right, maybe the morning guys get a little bit of better conditions, but it's only for an hour, right, that the winds are going to be above 6 miles an hour. And if that's going to be the case, I mean, that affects 3, maybe 4 holes out there for the players. And the reason why this is coming through is that there's a chance of a thunderstorm out there tomorrow afternoon. So obviously, if a thunderstorm comes through, the winds are going to kick up a little bit just before and then during that storm. But if there's a thunderstorm, if there's any sort of thunder activity out there in the area, they're not even going to be on the golf course. So as I said, I think the weather, going out there trying to find advantage would be a fool's errand to go out there and do so. And that's how I'm treating it out there for tomorrow. I think it's much more of a game theory slate than anything, much more about going out there trying to find some lower owned players, which could be tough on a 30-player slate, I have to say, right? Even 65 players after the cut can be a little bit tough sometimes. But when you only have 30, it is even more so the case, right? Tough to go out there and find some of those sub 10%, or I guess in this case, like sub 15%ers. They can go out there and play in lineups, but there are a few that you can get to out there in your exposure. So that's, I think, where all the quote unquote edge is out there for round 2 showdown, because there's no weather to go out there and try and play. It's not round 4 showdown. We're not worried about the placement points. There are going to be some super high-end players. So I'm going to try and point those out when we go through this spreadsheet on here. But outside of some super mega chalk, I don't think that anyone is unplayable. So we'll talk about a few of the guys guys that are garnering a little bit more steam than maybe they should be. But outside of that, you're going to see a lot of like medium to low owned players that I'm using. Just like I did for main slate, I'm probably going to leave a little bit of salary on the table when I'm going out there and building lineups. And I'm going to perhaps use lineup construction to go out there and be my friend as well. Whether that is an extreme studs and duds, which I'll be doing quite often out there, or being extremely balanced with some 8K players. There might be a few funky ways I'm going out there to make sure I'm getting different, but most of that is going to come down to just avoiding some of the super chalky guys that I'm going to point out here in a second. Then on top of that, maybe leaving a little bit of salary on the table. Let's talk about the ownership thing. So right off the bat, before we even touch on any questions or comments, I want to talk about the Scottie Scheffler ownership. So he's going to be about 40. I think I had him at like 43, 44% projected ownership. I've got him well over the 40% mark though. And I think in single entries, some maybe more casual contests, we don't have as many sharps in it. He might even be close to 50% ownership out there in contests. So let me get a sip of water here. And at that 50% mark, right, Showdown, it's just a no thank you. Because if you were going with the 2x mark, right, that means you'd have to lock them. Pretty much lock him out there in lineups to get any sort of leverage to him. And he kind of luck-sacked it with the putter today. I mean, I saw it forced firsthand. Front nine, especially, is when I was following his group. He did not look all that sharp out there with ball striking. It was, I would say, average at best, which for Scottie is well below his standards. Putter, though, bailed him out for a few birdies. Back nine, I watched him for the first 4 or 5 holes, and it was a lot of the same, right? Especially when he started to get on that little bit of a birdie run. And then I watched the last few holes on my phone as it was in my Uber ride home. And what I saw on that was, 17, he made like a 25-footer. Last putt wasn't that straightforward, but it was like a 10, maybe 12-footer he went out there and made. Those kind of putts don't always drop for Scottie Scheffler. So, if you're going to play him assuming that he's going to go out there and just repeat that kind of performance, I think he could shoot -4 tomorrow. I think that's probably what Scottie Scheffler is going to do, which is far from a problem. Starting there at -16, he'll probably still have the lead by like 5 shots if he goes out there and does that. But reality is, because the golf course is so scoreable, because there are so many birdies to be had, birdie average was nearly 5 per round today, by the way. We'll talk about that a little bit more later when we get to the prop side of things. But with all those birdies being made, if somebody down here does better than that, which is very likely, if that's going to be the kind of scoring that we get, then you're going to have them as opposed to Scottie Scheffler in round 2 Showdown. So you got to throw the placement points aside. You've got to consider that ownership angle when going out there and building lineups. I think ownership in single entries could be a little bit wonky with Scottie. I think he could be 50, 60% owned out there in some single entries. And I think in some of the more sharp contests, believe it or not, he might be closer to like 30, 40% owned. As a lot of your sharper players, right, tend to go out there and play that ownership game a little bit more. And if we're going to get him at like 30% out there in some of those like quote unquote sharper single entries, then maybe he's a play at that sort of ownership mark, because I've still got guys like Xander at 25%, even an Aubert, who's quote unquote a low owned player on this kind of slate, is still 18.4% owned. So, if Scottie is only going to be like 30% out there in a few contests, I don't think that he's unplayable any means at that kind of mark. In fact, he might actually be a pretty decent play. But personally, I think he's going to be closer to like I said, like 43, maybe 44% ownership. So he's the main guy, I would say, out there from the ownership side. But there are a few others, I guess, that would catch my eye. So an Adam Scott is probably a little bit chalkier than he should be. A Sahith Theegala, because he's at -7, is also probably going to be a little bit more popular than you'd be hoping for. A Keegan Bradley, a Wyndham Clark are both garnering a little bit of steam themselves. A Sam Burns, they're at -8 after the first round. And we're all guys that I think are going to be well over that 20% ownership, and in some cases even over 25% owned. So, and I'll just tell you that out of those 4 or 5 we pointed out, that I'm playing one of those still right out there in my lineups. So it's not like it's the end of the world. It's not like I think that you can't use a super chalky option. It's just that if you're going to use a Scottie up top, if you choose to take what I think will be about a 40, maybe 50% owned player out there at $12,000, but you probably shouldn't be pairing them up with those 20% owned guys down low. And it would be really easy to fall into the trap of wanting to use like an Adam Scott in that kind of lineup, is you're going to need the salary right after spending 12 grand on a Scottie. It'd be really easy to want to go down there and maybe play a Sahith Theegala after using a $12,000 player, right? He's only $6,900. what you do in those kind of lineups is, as opposed to taking the 25% of guys down low, is where it's where you take a pivot, right? It's where, we're going to talk about Sep as a potential pivot. Even a 15% owned Tom Hoagie down here is going to get you a little bit different to some of the other options. That's where taking that approach, maybe leaving a little bit of salary on the table, can offset that crazy ownership number up there with your first option. So, like I said, I'm not playing Scotty. If I didn't say it before, I'll just say it clear as day. I'm not using him out there in my lineups. I just don't think that he's going to make as many putts out there. Could he? For sure, right? We've seen him do it before. We've seen him go out there and boat race a field. So I don't want to act like it's impossible for him to go out there and do so. But would I count on that? Absolutely not. In fact, Ray, I'm obviously on the side that he's probably not going to go out there and have that kind of day, which is why I'd prefer starting with like a Ludwig Aubert. So we'll talk about him in a second. I know somebody had a question about Aubert and whether he was an option. He's actually the first guy we're going to talk about. So for sure, right? Somebody I'm considering. Where were we at? We had what's going on? Phil says, yo, Luke. And he went all in on Hideki once he saw the red question mark on his name. Yeah, they did the same thing with McIntyre. So I'm not sure if you guys saw that for the round 2 showdown, but they have a questionable tag on Robbie Mack, which makes no sense because all things I've heard, he's good to go out there for this week. So not a bad idea. And he didn't play horribly today, right? -1, very respectable out there round 1. Hopefully he can get things fired over this weekend. What's going on, Samuel? He said, you bet Scotty was saving his best for this tournament. I know that he's got the chip on his shoulder. That's for damn sure. He's had a lot of disappointing finishes here. He's been in this same situation before, actually, out there at Eastlake and then gone out there and crumbled. He's even had a 6-shot lead on Sunday and then gone out there and completely choked away that. It's hard to look past that, right? So he does have this big lead. He is like -300 in books to go out there and win, and it's world number 1. I definitely wouldn't bet against him, but at the same time, this golf course has had a knack for getting him off his game. Now it's renovated. It's a little bit different this year. So maybe it's different this time around, right? That's if anyone has a Scotty ticket, right? That's a reason to be excited about it. It is a quote unquote different golf course this time. But maybe it's just Atlanta that has his number, just like Louisville, Kentucky did, right? Shall we be expecting most to be hitting 5+ birdies? That'll depend on pin locations. So I guess we'll circle back on that, but not 100% sure. What was Horschel's ball striking like today? Do I like him for a bounce back? We'll take a look at it, Michael. I was not looking at it myself. Ball striking stats, if they're decent, you can get to them for a little bit of a bounce back. I'm getting a few texts right now, so let me make sure that nothing's going on. Okay, looks like my cat sitter got into my house, and they're sending me pictures of my cats. So I was like spammed with like 4 or 5 texts from the same number. I was like, oh shit, what's going on? Good text, I guess, from my cat sitter, making sure that they're okay. So yeah, well, I guess let me look at Billy's stats for you, man. We can do that here real quickly. So his ball striking, I guess I'll just spill the beans, was horrible out there for today. He lost 2 off the tee, a little bit over 2 off the tee, a little bit over 2 out there with his approach. It's not like he can't shake it off. So that's the one thing I'll say about your round 1 stats is you can use them, especially like if you see somebody that loses 2-3 strokes putting, like that's probably not going to happen out there for the next day. But somebody like Billy, I mean, it'd be great if we saw him out there gaining with approach and putter and, approach and off the tee. Then he, maybe lost like 4 strokes with a putter. But even if it is real ugly ball striking stats, it's only 1 round, right? He only played 18 holes. So I don't know if you want to read into that too much, right? Go out there and make all your decisions based on what you saw just for today, because golf's a fickle game, right? Sometimes you wake up, you just don't have your best stuff. Unfortunately for a lot of players, that's on Sunday when all the eyes are on them. And sometimes it's round 1. You saw it for Wyndham Clark at the Olympics. Went out there and medaled. Victor Hovland, same thing. Round 1, even round 2 wasn't his best stuff. Rounds 3 and 4 had some of the best rounds of anyone on the golf course. Somebody like Billy Ho, right, who has a lot to play for, right? He's not one of those guys that's super mega rich, right, out there on the PGA Tour, right? His check this week, right, difference between 30th and let's say like a 15th out there for Billy Ho, right, means something at this kind of event. So I would expect him to grind. So even though the ball striking stats aren't that great, I would say that he's still got a good chance to go out there and bounce back. He's going to be one of the few guys that even like Saturday, Sunday, if he's out of it, is probably going to go out there and give it his best stuff. Whereas there are certainly other guys out there in the field that I don't know if we can say that about, right? Certainly guys I would say that would go out there, maybe quit out there on a Saturday, Sunday. I don't think I have that same kind of issue or same kind of like worry out there with Billy Horschel. Let's talk about a few other players, or actually, I guess let's start up top with the first highlighted play. And that's going to be a Ludwig Gobert. And as per usual, guys, right, you don't have to use these players yourself. If you agree with my reasoning, you agree with the play, go out there, right, use them in your exposure if you'd like to. But what I like about Gobert and what I think you should be looking for in some of your players tomorrow is he just lost a bunch of strokes putting. That's not something that I would think would happen all week. He's a very sporadic putter. You've seen him go out there, light it up the first 3 days, and then completely disappear on Sundays. We've also seen him, start a little bit slow at golf tournaments and then go out there and find like 2-3 shots into the positive when it comes to the flat stick. So, he's 10 grand. He's going to be a little bit lower owned than some of the guys around him. Less than half the ownership of Scotty Scheffler when it comes to the projections, but lower owned than the Xander, than guys like a Rory, Hideki Matsuyama. So if you're looking to get a little bit cute with ownership, right, trying to get a little bit different with your, first man in out there in lineups, he could be that option at about 18.4% projected ownership. What I like even more about Ludwig Gobert is the fact that he has that positive putting regression. So, if he can go out there, take advantage of that, go out there, have a spike round with the flat stick, he hit the ball more than fine today. He hit a lot of darts. I saw him hit one out there in hole 3, out there to about 2 feet. Goes out there and does that. Maybe the putter doesn't even matter out there for round 2. But if he gets anything working with the putter, which you've seen him on Bermuda this year, have a lot of really good performances. In fact, you take a look at the Bermuda numbers, he's gaining over a half a stroke putting per round, and we could be really cooking out there for our round 2 lineups. Next up, we got, Patrick Cantlay at $9,200. He's a 24.3% owned. So you're not going to get any different by taking Patrick Cantlay, but that's kind of like par for the course down here in the 9K range. In fact, I've got guys at Morikawa at nearly 30% ownership. Sam Burns is also nearly 30% owned himself. So while a 24.3% owned player, right, looks pretty, shitty from the top level view, reality is he's actually about average, if not just maybe slightly above average ownership over there in this 9K range. And what I like about Patrick Cantlay is that he had a decent round, not a great round for his standards at least, and he lost a bunch of strokes with the putter. So just to give you some exact numbers, I'll give you guys the Gobert putting numbers, which for Gobert, he lost 1.3 strokes putting, and still tee to green was a little bit negative off the tee as well, which you're not used to seeing for Ludwig. Cantlay, though, granted, he shot -2, right? So it's not even like Cantlay had a bad day. So let's not completely rain, on his parade here, but he had lost 2.86 strokes out there with the putter. So outside of that, gained around the green, gained with the approach play, was also a slight gainer with his off the tee play. He's the exact kind of player that I could see going out there, flipping that flat stick and having a super low round. So I love that for Cantlay. He's coming with some ownership because he, starting at a slightly better score, but I'm still somebody that I think is more than playable. Also like a Big Dick Vic. He had a really good score when it came to fantasy performance. You played him in Showdown today. You were certainly happy about having him in lineups, but he's also the kind of player that played much better than his scorecard would indicate. He had multiple double bogeys on the round. He also had a bogey on top of that to take away from his actual score. So -2, right, doesn't look that great on paper, but the fantasy scoring, the birdies that you took from if you played him in Showdown today are exactly what we're looking for out there in round 2. So, 24% ownership, right? It's not like he's low owned out there in this range, but he's lower owned than Keegan. He's lower owned out there than a Wyndham Clark, and arguably is playing better golf than both of those players. Ball striking stats heading in, by the way, for Victor, and he's only $8,400 too, which is just way too cheap for somebody of his talent level. You're getting a really good price tag, a guy who's hitting the ball well, played well out there in round 1, and is not going to be chalk, right? All those things are normally things that are conducive towards somebody being mega chalky, and you can say I only have him at about 24.1%. Also, like a little bit of Sunjay M here at 20.6%. Had a really rough start to his golf tournament. I believe it was +3 through his first 3 holes. I saw him hit his drive on 4. I had not seen his first 3 holes out there, and he hit it to the side. I think he wiped it to the right. I couldn't really see where the ball flight was from my position. But what I did see was him slamming the driver down, which, I thought could go one of 2 ways. when you see that from a player, it shows that they care, right? So they're still grinding out there trying to get their score going, but sometimes it can get in their head, right? You see him spiral out of control, go from +3 to maybe +5, +6 in a hurry. He went out there, got the thing under par by the end of the day. So clearly took that as a challenge, was engaged, was just trying to grind it out there. And now, even though the scorecard doesn't look like he had the best of rounds, he made a lot more birdies than guys that were shooting like even -3, -4 rounds out there. So just like Hovland, I think a guy that should be getting more steam. And it's not like he's mega low owned at that 20.6% mark, but at the same time, that's about average for that range, which, by the way, there's only 30 players. So your average ownership in the field is about 20%. So if you're telling me he's about an averagely owned play despite what I think is really positive momentum heading into this round, and I'm going to be a buyer all day. So that's why I'm using him in lineups. Same thing with some of the other guys we've mentioned, right? No one here is going to be above your average ownership, right? Like guys like Cantlay, Hovland might be slightly above the average when it comes to that ownership, but an Aubert, right, overlooked, especially compared to some of his peers. And with these last two plays that we talk about here in a few minutes, it's going to be much of the same. So if you could guess, right, guys like Sahith, you're going to be a little bit chalky. I think even like Adam Scott, you'd throw into that category, like a Keegan Bradley, are just guys I'm not going to get to, right? If they're going to be chalkier than I think they should be, if they're going to be getting any sort of mega steam out there in round two, right? It's only an 18-hole sample, right? I'm not going to let that go out there and make my decision-making process. And more importantly, right, I'm trying to look for things in players. For Sanjay, by the way, he also, let's sort this by putting, he was also a loser with the putter. So he gained in the 3 tee to green categories, actually slate loser off the tee, but gained on approach and gained around the green, but he lost 1.44 strokes out there with the putter. So that was the clear problem for him. And just like a Cantlay, right, just what you talked about with Aubert, I think that's a reason to get to some guys here, right? If they went out there, they ball stroke it well. It's a brand new golf course, brand new greens. Maybe they're still trying to get used to it a little bit. Hopefully they can figure it out, try and find that bounce back for us, which would be huge out there in our lineups. Worth noting with good old Hovland, the putter was into the positive. He was a little bit hit or miss out there with the ball striking stats. But the big reason why he's so negative off the tee, for example, is because he lost 1.8 strokes off the tee on a single hole. The reason why the putter wasn't like 3 strokes out into the positive is he lost a stroke putting out there on hole number 10. Approach plays a lot of the same, a lot of big losses on single holes. So I think that's another way you can look at some of these players as well, is if it's only like 2-3 holes that held them back from having a really good day, then you could argue, of course, that there's upside for them to correct that and then go out there and have the kind of round that you're looking for. So I would say that that's the case with Hovland, and you could say the same thing about Sanjay, of course, starting 3 over par through his first 3 holes, which was sub-ideal as somebody that played a ton of them this week. What's going on, Blake? I said, Luke, my man, hope I enjoyed the tournament today. I did. It was a lot of fun, just really hot out there. He said you like Aubert up top, Finau mid-tier, and then Benny Ann for tomorrow. Benny Ann's one of those guys that could pop off with the flat stick, so I'm right there with you. Tony Finau, maybe a little bit more of a sneaky play, but I like it, dude. Who's my favorite bounce-back golfer? So I'll say, Sam, honestly, I think almost every player that we're going to talk about here would be a bounce-back golfer. So you're going to have a lot to choose from. So I'll let you choose your favorite out of the ones that we've talked through, but probably one of those. The waves may have been influential. Not sure what you're talking about. There's no waves, that's for sure. Hold up. Luke without the hat. Yeah, it's a first. It doesn't happen often, that's for sure. Will I ever play a guy in round 2 that had a great round run? Yes, I do it. So there are definitely guys that I'll play after having a low round, but it is rare, I would say. I don't use them very often unless the ball striking stats were just popping off the page, or if the eye test is really just something that, and I think they're super confident, I think that they're going to carry that day to day. It's usually hard to predict who those players are. So I, in general, don't play as much chalk as I would say other people out there do, but there are spots where I will. Now, round 2, I don't think that there are any like true chalky pieces that I'm using out there in my lineup. So it's a kind of a per slate thing, right? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And you're saying that Henley's looking good to you, for example. So yeah, you could get there. I don't think he's going to be mega chalky either. So I think he's going to get some steam out there at his score. I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy. Right? Yeah, gained on approach, slate gainer off the tee and with the around the green play. So I can't complain about it. yeah, I think he's an okay option. Like if you're going to take a chalky player to me, I think you just maybe have to be a little bit more careful about it, right? If you're going to take somebody that's average to maybe above average ownership, just really make sure you're deep diving the shots gained metrics, right? Make sure that they're playing in a way that is sustainable from day to day, something that you're comfortable with after round one. And everything I see there with Henley is pretty decent. Do I have any videos to help you understand terminology? I do actually, Ali. Great question. There's a video on my channel where I talk through some of the main golf DFS terminology. So I think for the sake of these live streams, that'd probably be the most helpful out there for you. And you're saying you're learning, you're understanding strokes gained in birdies, but you need help with everything else. That would be a good place to look at it. If you're looking for like golf specific things, like when it comes to stats, I believe there are a few videos out there as well that weren't published by me that would probably help you out there too. So check out that video on my channel. That's more DFS based. That's more talking about like fantasy sports. If you're looking for golf stuff, I'd probably look on YouTube elsewhere because I don't really have a video on that in particular, at least yet. So going on, Mark, round score props are lower than yesterday. Taking overs was profitable. You must have gotten lucky then, Mark. The scoring average was -2.5. So I profited by taking overs on birdies and unders on strokes. So I think that you just picked some lucky combinations, Mark, because if you're just joining us, we went through this before. Scoring average was 68.5, right? Which is the same, if not lower, than a lot of those strokes lines. So yeah, they're lower because the golf course was easier, which in a few cases probably makes sense. I do think that pins are going to make things a little bit harder for tomorrow. So, if you could find some value on some overs, I think you might be onto something out there for round two. But yeah, round one, if you profited with overs on strokes, I think you got a little lucky, if I'm being honest. That's, again, not a diss at all. Congrats. That's good stuff. But I do think you may have gone a little lucky there if you did. You meant that for the tournament, waves does not seem that influential. Yeah, there's no way to do it for a 30-player field, right? For a 50-player field, for example, right? It's just like not a thing. Full event stuff, when you have 156 players, even if it's like 120 out there for like an invitational, that matters for sure, right? We talk about that every week, right? That's a huge focus of ours over here on the channel. Not so much when it's a 30-player field, though. And Sam, by the way, it's because the guys started with strokes, right? So the guys that were teeing off later were the guys that started at the top of the leaderboard. So I think that's why you're saying that, man. What's going on, Hamza? You should stream one day out there. I would get kicked out, unfortunately, Hamza, or else I would. And is Keegan Bradley on steroids or something? No. He had a very average round. If anything, had a very good day over there in Colorado, but good tournament, I should say, out there with the win. But no, he's not on steroids. He just had a good week last week. All right, let's talk about some lineup construction stuff. Let's build a lineup together and get this thing going. And by the way, if you're saying that because of his prop today, he had 5 birdies, but he made them like from 10, 15 feet. So congrats to him. He luck sacked it with the putter and got the 5 birdies, which was just slightly better than the field average. So yeah, I don't think you need to be on steroids to go out there and gain 0.3 birdies to the field, but maybe you do, I guess. Damn, your secret is out now. You're saying out there with the waves. Okay, there you go, dude. I honestly don't know what you're saying. All right, let's build a few lineups together. So what we're going to do here is just kind of talk through the things I'm looking at when I'm building a lineup, which varies from contest to contest. But for the sake of this, we're going to focus on the big field GPPs, which is pretty similar to what I'd be doing there in single entries. The one difference I'll say is that in GPPs, we're really going to have to force in differentiation. Reason for that, these large field GPPs are so top heavy with the payouts that duplicating is just a complete death sentence when it comes to your long-term ROI. Now, single entries, the reason why I say I'm not as worried about this is that it's a lot harder to go out there and duplicate yourself. But in a 30 golfer field, it is much easier to go out there and take the same 6 players as opposed to even when you have like 50 or 65 players. If you know anything about, the math of combinations out there, permutations would be different, but this is combinational math out here. It's in factors of what's the word for it? It's the exclamation point, a factorial. Oh, I went to engineering school. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, so I should have known that a lot quicker. It's that information rubs off rather quickly when you get out of the industry. But yeah, you have to use the exclamation mark math out there, which is extreme. It scales even more so than like an exponential graph. So when you go from like 30 players to 60, even to like 65, 70, like you get in a cut event that has maybe more players that make the cut, your chances of duplicating don't just go up like twice as much, right? Like you think maybe some of you out there think that it's like, okay, there's 30 players as opposed to 60. Like it's like maybe twice as easy to go out there and duplicate yourself. No, it's like 5,000 times more likely, actually more than that. It's like, I can't do the mental math right now, but it's like a million times more likely to go out there and duplicate yourself. So even for like normal main slate stuff, unless you're taking a bunch of chalk, you're probably not duplicating yourself that often out there in GPPs. But in a 30 player field, you have a infinitely high, it's not actually infinitely higher, but you have an infinitely higher chance of going out there and duplicating yourself, which is why in those big field contests, you better be getting different. You better be going out there, maybe leaving some salary on the table, because if you're winning first place, maybe you chop it, you're happy that 1 week. Long term, though, that is going to have a massive impact against your ROI. So I would say if you're going to play the big field GPPs, you're going to play in the 150 maxes, big $5, big $25, whatever it is, go out there and play it the right way. If you win, make it actually matter. Don't go out there, chop it with 10 other people. Maybe it's like more realistically, right, like chopping with like 4 or 5 people. Go out there to win and win by yourself, which is real simple to do. You could do it even playing a Scotty. You could even do it with playing like Scotty and, a chalky guy down low, like Sahith Theegala. You could take those two kind of players if you leave salary on the table. You leave 500, maybe even $1,000 on the table. You take those chalky pieces all you want. So I think it's pretty simple when you're going out there and building lineups, guys. Just cater it towards the contest that you're entering. You're entering the large field GPP, make it a priority to make sure that you're not going to duplicate yourself. If you're going to enter out there in like a single entry contest, you want to be a little bit more focused on just taking the best plays. But even at that point, you still need leverage against the other entries that you're playing against. So, if you're going to take a pretty chalky Scotty Shuffler, maybe you don't accomplish it by leaving salary on the table, but maybe by not taking the chalky Sahith down low, right? Maybe that's where you're forcing in some 10 to 12, 14 percenters maybe down there in the 6 and 7K range to go out there and offset a 40 to 50% on Scotty. So that's what I'll say about lineup construction. We're actually going to build a lineup together here in a second. If you have any DFS questions, we're going to be going on to props here in a few minutes. So go ahead, let me know down in chat what you guys are thinking. And if you're here for the Underdog and Prize Pick stuff, we'll be on that in probably about 2-3 minutes. So just hang tight. We'll be talking about those here in a few minutes, and we'll get after it. We'll need some shots from the stands if possible. So I have a few pictures, Sam. So if you're in the Discord, I'll try and throw those on there. I threw a video over there on the prop channel if you want to check that out now, Sam. But I took some pictures and some videos out there that I didn't end up posting on Discord yet. I got a few videos off the tee. I got Wyndham, who anytime I see Wyndham with a driver, I turn and walk that way, right? If I see Wyndham on a tee box, especially a par 5, like I was able to catch him on today, that's a no-brainer, right? It's like seeing Rory with the driver, right? You see Rory stepping onto a tee box, you go, okay, I want to watch that, right? And you walk that direction. So I got a few tee shot videos. I got Rory driving. I got Wyndham driving. Coincidentally, both had probably the worst driver swings of the day when I went out there and took the video. But I'm sure I'll be sure to post them, dude. Factorial, exactly. Golly. That's the thing, dude. When you're in school and then you don't use it for or even out in the workforce like I was, right? And you get out of it for 3-4 years like I am, you lose it quick. That's for sure. It's like Spanish. I went to school. I took 7 years of Spanish, high school and in college. I added on top of it. If I went down into a restaurant, I could order, I could do normal things, but it would take me a second or two to compute. It'd be pretty embarrassing for somebody that was nearly fluent at some point. Now I'm nowhere close to that. That's for sure. You see, I got a tan already. Yeah, pretty much. Am I going to play the course after or just go back home? Can't play the course after. It's a private course, East Lake. If they invited me out to do so, I 100% would go out there and just stay and play. Unfortunately, don't have my clubs with me, so I'd have to rent a pair out there from the club. But unless they're going to do that, unless they're going to invite me out, Hamza, unfortunately, I won't be able to. It's, like I said, a private establishment. Can't just make a tee time out there at East Lake, or else I absolutely would. It's an unbelievable golf course after seeing it in person. You'll be looking forward to those? Absolutely, Sam. I got you. I'll post a few before I head out to dinner. Let's build this lineup here. So when you're building, this is going to be for the large field GPP. I'm just going to use Scotty here just for the sake of showing you how you could make one of these lineups different. This is not a lineup that I'd be getting to myself. So for example, we're going to use Scotty in this lineup. I'm also going to throw in a Sahith Theegala at $6,900, both of which, by the way, aren't in my player pool. But the reason why they were throwing these two in here is that they're going to be much higher owned than some of their peers. And for as much of a sin as I think that is, right? You should not be going out there just taking chalk at all 6 spots. Even if you do it in 2 spots and you have the 40+% out there with Scotty Scheffler, you can still make this lineup work. And I guess I'm just doing this to prove a point, to show you that as long as the rest of your lineup is built properly, you're going to be good to go, even in like the big 5 or big $25. So for our next man in, we're going to go down here and find a little bit of a pivot. Now, we're still going to have to take one more spend up. So, we're not going to be able to take somebody that's super low owned out here with this kind of play. But this is where you avoid the Sam Burns, the Keegan Bradleys, the Wyndham Clarks that are going to be really chalky, and maybe where you take a chance on a Tommy Fleetwood. Maybe you go down a little bit further, and rather than taking a Russell Henley, this is where you force in a Billy Horschel as a pivot. Now, I don't think you have to go that crazy out there in lineups, so maybe you go down here and you throw in an Akshay there at $6,800. We're actually going to have to take one more spend up, so let's go out there and just do that right now. Let's throw in a Victor, $8,400, and then for your last man in, so we've got the Scotty Thigala chalk. Fleetwood's a little bit low owned, but he's still over 10%, as pretty much everyone is out here on the slate. In fact, I believe all my projections, at least, everyone's over 10% owned. Bhatia, same thing, right? He's in that 10 to 15% range. Hovland, we already know, right? He's a little bit over that 20%. Because we really don't want to duplicate ourselves here. And just for the sake of this lineup, right? It's one of the big field GPPs. We're going to leave some salary on the table. So we're going to go down here. You could throw in a Sanjay, I think, as your last man in. And because you have $500 left on the table, because you were mindful and played somebody like a Fleetwood, took a few other low-end options like a Bhatia in this lineup, you probably get away with it out there in the large field GPP, right? This probably wouldn't be duplicated. It might, and if it is going to be duplicated, it's probably only going to be once out there in that kind of contest. And you're accomplishing a lot of the things you're looking for. You still have some of the higher projected owned plays, right? If you want to play like a Scotty Thigala in lineups, and no one here's a horrible play. Like, Sanjay, I like a whole lot. I love a Hovland out there. Fleetwood, Bhatia, maybe not my favorite plays in particular, but still guys that project for about an average projection out there in round 2. So I wouldn't knock you for playing any of those sort of players. So that's what I'll say about the slate, is that even if you want to take some chalk, I guess you can pull it off. I prefer to take some of the slightly lower owned options, but do your thing up top, right? If you really want to plant your flag in Scotty, one of those other guys that's going to be like 25 to 30%, just commit to them, right? Go out there, maybe you lock them, maybe you go out there and take them 75 to 80% of lineups. Just make sure you're getting over the field, make sure you're getting some benefit out of using them in your player pool. Unless you're 150 maxing. You're 150 maxing, you could go 50-50 out there on Scotty. Maybe not my favorite approach to go out there and play DFS, but you could do it. It's at least reasonable if you have like 150 lineups. If you're entering like 5 to 20, then forget about it, right? Go out there, commit to one direction or the other on somebody like a Scotty, which for a 5 to 20 maxer is probably either playing them in every single lineup or going out there and avoiding them in all 5 to 20 lineups. So that's what we'll say about that. That's all I've got out there for DFS. I don't have any lights on in here. By the way, the place I'm staying has lights above. I shouldn't say lights, just holes in the ceiling with glass on them, obviously, that lets some of the natural sunlight through. And as the sun is going down, I'm getting darker over here. So I might have to turn on a light here in a minute. Hopefully you can see me. Where are we at? You heard I'm playing at the Content Creator Classic. Oh boy, that wouldn't be pretty, Karoom. I probably would have beat like 2 people out of the field that they had this year. So yeah, if I play, bet against me if they post props for it on any of the sites. Just tell them, do you know who I am? Hey, one of these days we'll get a big enough following that maybe they'll consider it. And if I started to do actual golf videos, maybe I could build that kind of channel, but I don't know if that's something I really want to do. Not really something that I aspire for myself, but I would say that the golf videos with me and my buddies would be a lot of fun. There'd be a lot of things said that would probably make a lot of people mad, but I guess it would be fun. Who knows? My friends are a hoot. They just do not give a fuck. They say whatever's on their mind, and I'm sure that there's people out there that would be triggered by the things that they say. What's going on, Hamza? Like over 5.5 birdies for an easy cash. Who are you saying that for? Not sure, but yeah, 5.5 birdies, easy cash. I don't know if I would use that in the same sentence, but I guess golf course played easy, right? What about Master 2 gloves? So he played pretty well today, right? Went out there, he posted one of the better scores out there in the field. I would say that he's an option, but he is getting some steam, partially because of how he started this week, right? That's part of that. Yeah, that's what I would say about it. Luke, over 5.5 birdies, easy cash. You're saying, oh, so I see what you're saying now. Instead of like, you meant Luke. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I would say that if they set my line for 18 holes around Eastlake, that a 1.5 birdie line would probably be fair. And that would be with like easy pin locations. They give me PGA Tour pin locations. I'd be that 0.5 line that you saw for John Daly at like the PGA Championship. I'd be that 0.5 line that you saw for Vijay Singh. I think it was at the Open Championship. Yeah, it would not be great. It's just too long of a course for me to play from the tips. I'm not that long off the tee. I hit it 280 when I hit one good, and that's with rollout, of course. I don't carry it 280 yards. So it would be a tough scene. You had some guys out there that really played well. Are there cuts? So no cut this week, Rez. Good question. It's a 30-player event, so everyone will play the 4 rounds. Rounds 3 and 4, you may have to look at motivation as a factor, as even though there's no cut line, if you're completely out of it, you might not care as much as some of the other guys that are closer to the lead, or at least in the mix out there for positioning. So yeah, no cut line, but there's that to consider, I would say. And of course, I got you, dude. All right, let's talk through some of these averages and then talk about the underdog and prize pick stuff. So the averages from today, already mentioned the scoring average of 2.53 under. Birdie average was 4.65. I would say that that's probably going to go down a little bit, assuming that they're going to have slightly harder pins. And then this bogey average here at about 2 per round. I'm not sure if that one's going to change that much, actually. I would say, if anything, it's going to go slightly up. Just like the birdie average going slightly down out there with some harder pins. But I think the bigger difference is going to be that the super easy holes, so your 3 par 5s, like hole 8, like I think it might be a slightly harder setup for tomorrow. So I guess we can stop guessing. Let me see if they've posted the pins over there on Twitter yet. If they have, I want to do a little deep dive on them, as I think it's going to have a massive impact on scoring. So it doesn't look like we have the pin locations quite yet, which is unfortunate, but is what it is. But when we get those, I'm thinking that the par 5s are going to be a little bit more tucked than what we had for today. Would not surprise me if they moved back some of the par 3s. Maybe not playing them at their full distance or full length, but maybe just, a little bit longer than what they were for today. They were all moved up significantly when it came to their yardage. So that's why I think that the averages might get a little bit harder. Fairways, probably not going to move. I think 8 per round is probably a pretty good barometer of what to expect. And then this green and regulation average, it might go marginally down if they were to tuck pins a little bit more, but that average isn't going to move all that much. So I think that the bigger change might be from the scoring aspect. If they go out there and move some stuff around, maybe they move those par 3s back. That could also lower the green and regulation average a little bit. But outside of those changes, these averages are going to be gold. They're going to be things that we can use out there for our analysis. And I guess just to give you a barometer of what I'm expecting, I would say about 2 under par. I'd say about 4.5 birdies. I'd say like 2.1 bogeys or worse per round. 8 fairways, I think, is a good number. And then this green regulation average, maybe it's like 12.25 per round. It might even drop that whole 0.5 like I'm calling for right there. Or maybe it's like, I don't know, like 12.6 per round, 12.5 per round or something like that. You guys get the idea, though. Those are the kind of averages that I'm expecting and that I'm going to be running through these props with. So let me refresh Underdog. Let's refresh Prize Picks. Underdog did not have anything posted before we went live, at least. And then Prize Picks still doesn't have anything posted quite yet. So yeah, it looks like we got some stuff over here on Underdog, which is clutch. And they added new pictures, by the way, which was one of the first things that I noticed when bringing up their app today. Of course, Sam said thank you for all the hard work. Time for dinner and best of luck. Yeah, dude, I can't wait for dinner myself. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I appreciate that, man. Best of luck tomorrow. Let's go through this, though. So the strokes lines on Underdog aren't really that much different than what they had for today, right? So just to go through those, like Scotty is still 67.5. Rory was at 68 heading into the week. Let's see what else. Guys like Sam Burns at 68.5, pretty much the same as heading into the golf tournament. Hovland is at 68.5. Oh boy. So they didn't adjust the board very much, which I kind of agree with, if I'm going to be honest with you, because if I think it's going to be like a -2 scoring average, having a guy like Morikawa at -3 makes sense. given that he usually gains to the field, right, at about a stroke per round, in fact, over his career. Okay, so I kind of agree with what they're doing here. What I also want to bring up, let me see if DraftKings or FanDuel have anything posted, which I'm not sure that FanDuel is actually going to let me bring it up, which is crazy. This laptop, by the way, whatever it is, when you're like out of state or near the state where like some of these books are illegal, sometimes you can bring up the props, sometimes you can't, depending on where you're at. So here's DraftKings. We're definitely going to have that to look at. But I would prefer to be able to look at FanDuel as well, as you guys know. So let's see. So Fleetwood 60.5, and he's juiced under. Okay, good to know. These look like identical lines to what they had yesterday, by the way. Aubert minus 155, pretty much the same number. Rory is actually at 67.5 now, so they bumped that one down a little bit. But he's juiced over, as you can see, with the minus 155. 69.5 for the Gala, and he's juiced under. I ended up betting that today, and that hit, which was pretty sweet. What was he at over here? So he's at 69 flat in terms of a projection. Let's keep going through this. Even money for Xander at 67.5, and pretty much the same thing for Scotty, which is a little bit surprising. I thought they might put him down to like minus 140 juice, but he is at even money right there. And compared to the sportsbook odds, I think that they're dead on with most of these, right? Like, so Rory was 67.5 and juiced over. Right? He's at 68 strokes. Somebody like a Sahith, right, was juiced to minus 155 under 69.5. He's down there at 69 strokes. So it looks like they pretty much copied DraftKings, or maybe DraftKings went out there and copied Underdog when it came to their pricing, but maybe a few that we could take advantage of. So one that stuck out, what was Cantley at? So yeah, Cantley is minus 130 towards the under. If you weren't with us when we were talking about the DraftKings stuff before, talking about some of the showdown plays, Cantley lost the most strokes out of anyone in the field today when it came to putting. In fact, and by the way, he's one of the better putters. So that's why I say that, so surprised out there with Patrick Cantley. And he still shot minus 2. You see, he lost about 3 strokes out there with the putter. So I honestly think that he's going to have a really good day. At least he's due for some positive regression, I would say. So I'm going to throw him in there. It's not the most juice, but at the same time, I liked him even before, right? We were looking at the sportsbook odds. A Rory at 68, I don't think is the worst idea, but I do prefer these guys at like 68.5 or maybe even like 69.5 strokes, as I prefer to stay away from the ties when I can. Let's see. Clark was even money, right? Is that right? So Wyndham Clark, he was closer towards the bottom. So yeah, he was, I guess, marginally juiced towards the under. He looked really good out there. So the reason why I was line shopping for him and I wanted to look at the under is Windy looked really in control of his golf ball. He was confident. He was putting the ball well as well, which you're not always going to get from him, but he is one of the better putters out there in the PGA Tour. I think he looked pretty good out there, so I don't know. Gavin's pointing out Akshay at 69.5. Yeah, is that on Underdog? I'm assuming it is, right? Because it's the only board that we've got up here. So maybe even a silly question of me to ask. So yeah, 69.5. But essentially be asking for a field average round, right? Is what we're asking for Akshay Bhatia. Worth noting that he is a below average player, but to have a field average round, I don't think is the craziest thing to ask. What we have to kind of consult here is we need to look at the shots gained metrics. So he did lose on approach today. He did lose off the tee. So these shots gained metrics are probably the only reason I wouldn't play that myself. But with the scoring average that we're expecting, right, around a -2 scoring average, you're not asking him to do anything crazy to go out there and shoot -2. So I'm probably not going to play that one myself, but I would certainly lean towards the under. Tommy Fleetwood, by the way, just saw this one on here. He was, what was it, -145 towards the under. So maybe he's the pairing that we go with out there with a Patrick Cantley. Just to show you the shots gained metrics of Tommy Fleetwood, I guess we need to deep dive it before we commit to it. He lost 2 strokes on approach, which is horrible. That's about the opposite of what we want to see. And then he gained to the putter. Now, the one thing I'll say about Tommy, and the reason why I'm going to forgive him for this and probably take him for this slip here, is Tommy has been unbelievable hitting the ball recently. In fact, you take a look at like the recent form heading in, he's a top 5 ball striker in the field. Now, the reason why he hasn't been winning golf tournaments with that kind of shots gained metrics is he's been losing like a half a stroke putting per round. Last weekend on Saturday, round 4 showdown, we brought this up. It's why Tommy Fleetwood was one of our conviction plays from round 4 showdown. Round 3, he went out there and gained with the putter, which was like the first time he had done it in forever. Just like Max Homo, by the way, right? He gained strokes off the tee round 3. It was why he was such a nuclear play out there for us in round 4 showdown last week, which, by the way, round 4 showdown went really, really well. One of the best ROIs I've had in showdown for quite some time without a takedown. But that's the exact reasoning that we got to him, and now he gained round 1. So the issue, the thing that's been holding him back from having these low rounds, has seemingly been figured out, because the last 2 rounds last week, the first round this week, he's into the positive. That off the tee play, that approach play has got to get better for him to go out there and have a week. But it's Tommy Fleetwood. I don't know if I'm that worried about it. He's a striper, hits the ball straighter than pretty much anyone out tour. Hits a bunch of fairways. Also a really good iron player when he's dialed in. So yeah, 2.3 strokes lost out there on the irons was not great today, but I'll definitely play him. So for the sake of this slip, I kind of like those two, but I want to find a fade if possible to make this payout a little bit better. And the average was only 2 per round. It's a little bit risky with a Pavon if we were to go with it, but like he'd be the kind of guy I'd want to fade, right? A guy that's lower level, worst form of anyone heading into the week. What do they have these other guys at? So like a guy like Morikawa's at 1.5. I just want to see where they have like the better players. So 2 for an Adam Scott. I mean, he could be a fade candidate out there at 2 bogeys, that's for sure. So maybe there's better options. Maybe we can find a shitty player at like 2 bogeys to go out there and fade. But let's see what we've got. So 2.5 for a lot of these like lower tier guys. 2.5 for Sepp. 2.5 for Aaron Rye is crazy. If anything, I think the under on Aaron Rye would be what I'd take for him in particular. Let's see. Let me get about this water too. One thing's for sure, guys, if you guys head out to the golf tournament this week, I know I had a few people on my Discord ask me about it today. Drink some water. It is unbelievably hot and humid out there. So what do they have Pavon at for strokes, right? I don't think he had like a DraftKings line. But what would he be at, as I guess the question, right? Because they do have Sahith at 69.5. Now, granted, he's minus 155 juiced. What would a shittier player be at? My guess is 69.5 and juiced over, if we had those for comparison. FanDuel, by the way, it's not going to let me bring it up here on the live stream. Not going to let me bring up the odds. I tried to yesterday. It wouldn't work. I'm going to bring it up on my phone. So it will work on my mobile app. Maybe it has to deal with like the Wi-Fi or whatever with why you can't bring it up. But let me see if they have any like those shittier guys posted. Because I just want something for reference, a little reference point to go off of. So they have a lot of the same guys posted up top that you saw over there on DraftKings. All the same players so far, unfortunately. There's Tommy is minus 140 on that slate. What was Cantlay? Cantlay is minus 120 over there on FanDuel. No shitty players. Everyone's decent. I guess Keegan, right? He's 68.5 and he's juiced minus 140 for the over 68.5. We could just go with the 2-man. We could just take the worst payout on that 2.75x or 2.7x, I guess, for that combination. But ideally, if you guys have a fade that you'd like to play or something that really stands out, if you mix it in, you're going to get a much, much better payout. So I guess just to show you what that would look like, or if you find one, it'd be 6.29x out there for a 3-man slip, which is actually one of the better payouts that you can find across the industry. I guess going through these, like an Adam Scott at 2 bogeys, like might not be the worst play. Let me bring up the stat averages on PGAtour.com just to double check where he's at for the season-long leaderboard. I think he's like a number 67 or something like that when it comes to his bogey avoidance. But let's see. Let me share the screen. And if it's exactly 67, then we're going to fade him because that's a sign if I could remember that off the top of my head. He's number 59, so damn close. I guess last week his good performance at the BMW had him improve on that quite significantly. That's not bad, actually. He's got one of the better bogey avoidances on tour at that kind of number, at least in this field. 2 bogeys, though, there's a ton of push equity at that kind of number. That's a tough one. It's the same payout. Pavon is undeniably a worse player, right? So if you're going for over equity, Pavon has more of that, getting to 3+ bogeys or worse. The issue is that the projection on Adam Scott, right, gives us a lot of leeway with this 2 bogey projection. Ugh, it's a tough one. We'll have to circle back on that, hopefully after we have a prize picks board here. So let me refresh this. Let's see what we've got. If not, we'll go to pick 6, hopefully delay enough to go out there and get a prize picks board. But yeah, let's go to pick 6. So nothing posted on prize picks quite yet. There's PGA Tour. Get off my screen. We do not care. Thank you. I can't even play pick 6, so I especially do not care. So at 67.5, you've got a few more players posted over there on this site. 68.5, a lot of the same cats that we have over there on Underdog. So nothing that really stuck out, at least for the strokes lines that we had there. 5.5 birdies for the top 2. Expected, but I would never take an over on somebody at 5.5 birdies. I think just asking too much, unless it's a joke of a golf course. Well, it's easy. This is not a joke of a course, that's for sure. And then 4.5 for a bunch of mid-tier players. Oh, God. By the way, I think that's probably the correct projection for a lot of these guys. And if anything, I think you would take their under at 4.5 birdies, as I think the average for the field will probably be at about 4.5. And I guess outside of like Aaron Rye, he's probably better than average. I mean, even like a Horschel, like these bottom 4 players, I mean, even like Adam Scott, I guess you can include in that. I mean, they're below average players in this strong of a field. That's what you got to remember with these props, right? Is like normally Akshay, I know we had like the question about the 69.5 strokes. If this was a normal tour event, I would be hammering that, because asking him to have an average round in like a regular tour event is cakewalk for him, right? He does that all the time. This kind of field, though, right? He's even like a below average player. So we gotta remember that when we're doing these props, because it can have a massive impact on how we're going out there and attacking things. I've got to say, this pick 6 board is not my favorite. Like, I guess in terms of like plus EV stuff, this over on McIlroy strokes is, believe it or not, plus EV. Everything else, though, is pretty much a toss-up. Like, I guess the under on Cantlay, right, we were pointing that one out. Like, you could play that on this site too. But the rest of these 68.5s are all pretty much a toss-up. I did like Wyndham Clark. So if you're just trying to find something to put together and you're not like worried about it being mega value out there that you're entering, like, you know, technically Rory's value, but guys like Cantlay, Wyndham, I don't think it'd be the worst leans. At this 4.5, you know, if I was going to mix in anything here, like maybe an under on Straka for birdies, and I still think he's capable of having a pretty good round. But at the same time, 4.5 birdies is asking quite a bit. So I'm probably siding towards like these top 3, like maybe even these top 2, if you just want to enter like a 2-man slip out there for tomorrow. But this board, especially because we just don't have that many guys to choose from, right? It's like 8 birdie lines and 10 strokes lines to choose from. It's just not, it's never been the best product. They've been trying to change a few things lately to make the payouts a little bit different, which I think is great. I think they're trying to, you know, improve their product, but right now it's still leaving a lot to be desired for me. So let's circle back to Underdog. Hopefully we can get a prize picks board posted before we get off live stream here. But let's figure out what we're actually going to do with these props, because, you know, I would say this Fleetwood prop we're locked in on. I'm like 100% committed to playing this Tommy Fleetwood prop. The Cantlay one, I'm at like 65% on whether I want to play that one or not. This Adam Scott one, I'm 50-50 on. Maybe chat can help me. Maybe if you like one of those, you can sell me on it. But I'm still a little bit iffy on those other 2. Any matchups that I like. So it depends on what kind of matchups you're talking about. So whether it's like 3 balls, I guess it wouldn't be 3 balls this week. It'll be head-to-heads over there on books, or whether you're talking about like birdie or better matchups. So just clarify for me, and then I'll let you know. If Adam Scott hits exactly 2 bogeys and pushes, does the slip pay out like a 2-man rate? Yes. And I think the way that they do it with golf, because golf has the multipliers, right? You got to treat it a little bit differently than some of the other sports, is I think it just like pays you half. So if it's like 6.29x out there for the 3-man, I believe a pushed 2-man slip would pay like 3.1 1x, or I guess like 3.09x if they choose to go that direction with the rounding. But I believe that's how they do it. So don't quote me on it. I think it could be different, but that's at least what I think. So yeah, you're talking about the matchups. I'll bring them up on DraftKings. So I can't bet any here. So I'm in Georgia. Unfortunately, I think all sports books are illegal here. I might be wrong on that, by the way. They might not be. And if not, I guess I could have a few other ways to get exposure. But yeah, my book that I use down in Florida, I can't use up here in Georgia. So I'll look through them, but I can't play them myself, unfortunately. So we're just going to look at the ones without a tie. I prefer to play the market where you don't have to worry about that plus 550 tie. These, of course, right, if they tie, if they have the same score, it would be a refund, which I prefer over that other scenario. And going through these, and it's really dark now. You guys probably can't even see my face. It's getting so dark in here, which is great. I have a little bit of a headache, so it's great for my headache, though, the lower lighting. So I'm actually not going to change it. But going through some of these two balls, let's make sure the right tab's up. It is. Cool. So Xander versus Adam Scott. Xander's the clear favorite, but minus 225 odds. I guess you could play it if you put it in a parlay, because I do think that Adam Scott is due for some regression. I think in general, Xander Schauffele is probably going to get a lot better than what we saw for round one. So I think there's a lot of reasons why, I think Xander's going to crush Adam Scott tomorrow, but minus 225 is a lot to lay. So if you're going to play it, I guess throw it in a parlay if you can, but I'm not sure with the DraftKings rules on whether you can actually do that over there on that site. But yeah, minus 225. I mean, if it was closer to like minus 175, I'd probably be hammering it. Minus 225 feels a little bit more appropriate, but still definitely the lean. Hideki versus Keegan is an interesting one because I would say that Hideki should be a much larger favorite than this minus 145, which isn't unsubstantial juice, right? It's still minus 145. But you got to remember, like an even line over here, like I say, this is like minus 115 versus minus 110 is minus 115. So yeah, Hideki just clearly the better player than Keegan. I would say that the form between the two is pretty close, all things considered, because sure, Keegan won last week, but Hideki also won the week before that. And before that, Hideki was playing better golf than Keegan Bradley. So I actually think that out of all of these matchups, that's like by far my favorite that we've seen. I think that Patrick Cantlay should be more than a minus 120 favorite over Russell Henley. I think Henley's a little bit of a fraud, if we're being honest. I think that Cantley's like just clearly the better player. So let's go ahead and throw him in there. I don't want to take all favorites, but these two in particular, I think they should be juiced a lot more than what they are, considering their opponent. Don't love any of these underdogs, especially against guys like Hovland, Aubert that I really like tomorrow. Just probably not the best spot to take a fade. I think Benny Ann is live for a sneaky round, but Tony Finau's a tough guy to try and pick against. Honestly, between this Batia and Hoagie, if Hoagie was plus money, even if this was like plus 100 odds, which it's pretty damn close to it, out there at minus 105, I'd be taking Tom Hoagie versus Batia, as Hoagie had a much better ball striking day than Akshay, and Akshay had lost strokes off the tee and on approach. So, yeah, honestly, minus 105 might even be good enough to get there, but yeah, those would probably be my favorite two balls, going through them. The guys that are like minus 170, minus 180, like you can see like Fleetwood, for example, is minus 170 versus Kirk. Like that's what I think Hideki should be. Like Hideki should be like minus 175 versus Keegan. And it's not like it's a diss towards Keegan, but like Hideki is just clearly the better player between those two options. That's what I say on the matchup side, man. Let's see. Any board on Prize Picks yet? I'm just hoping that they post that over there. So we'll have to see on this exposure. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to decide on this before we get off live stream, as Prize Picks unfortunately has not hooked us up with a board quite yet. But of course, guys, for all the different exposure that I'm taking, make sure to check out the Patreon page. On there, I'm posting every single slip that I'm putting my money behind and giving you guys all the thought process and reasoning for getting to all of those options. So on there, of course, right, I can tell you right now, I will be playing that Tommy Fleetwood prop 100%. That Cantlay prop's probably closer to like 70% now that I'm going out there and playing. Still kind of 50-50 on the Adam Scott one. But if I end up getting to all of those, you're going to get the full breakdown, the full projection breakdown on why I like all those different options. on top of that, right, that's the prop tier that'll give you access to this Underdog and Prize Picks plays. Also, we've got the DFS tier over there for the Showdown side. So with that spreadsheet that you saw with all my projections that were blacked out, for everything on there uncensored, including my entire player pool out there in contest, all my projections, all the ownership out there for tomorrow's slate, make sure to check out the DFS tier for that. But that's all I've got, guys. I've got dinner reservation in an hour, which I've got a shower for. I've got to get ready, get in the Uber and all of that. So I appreciate everyone stopping by as per usual. Best of luck out there with everything that you guys are doing tomorrow. And yeah, we'll have a light next time. I'll have my ring light behind the camera there, so you guys can actually see me as time goes on. And yeah, round 3-4 live streams will begin right back after it out here for this week. So I'm stoked for it. Still got a whole weekend to come. Hopefully round 2 treats us nicely out there, and you can go out there and have yourselves a week. That's all I've got. Appreciate you guys, and catch you guys for the next live stream.